Part 100. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 992. Although Runzhou experienced the rebellion, after the chaos was quelled and calm returned, Runzhou is still the economic center of Jiangnan and the most prosperous place in the entire southeast. In Runzhou city, in front of an ordinary courtyard. I want it too, I want it too. And I. 5 or 6 children gathered around the woman in white, scrambling to stretch out their hands. The woman in white put the candy in their palms, watched them disperse in a hurry, and stood quietly, with a touching expression on their faces. Smile. At a certain moment, the smile on her face suddenly froze. She turned around quickly and ran towards the yard as if she was running away. Tang Ning stood not far away, looking at Tang Shui, who was about to run away, and asked helplessly, "Am I so scary?" Tang Shui stiffened and turned to look at Tang Ning with a smile on his face. "Why are you here?" Tang Ning said, "I came to see my parents, but it's a pity that they have already left." Tang Shui lowered his head and said, "They said they wanted to visit everywhere and go back in 2 years." Tang Ning nodded, indicating that she understood. Then she looked at Tang Shui in surprise and asked, "Okay, why are you blushing?" Tang Shui glanced at him and felt slightly annoyed. If she hadn't been avoiding him, why would she have come to Jiangnan? When she saw Tang Ning, she would think of their engagement. She still didn't know how to deal with this matter. Now you can't even hide from him. Tang Shui looked at him angrily and was about to speak when the door on the other side suddenly opened and a middle-aged man walked out. When Tang Jing saw the figure opposite Tang Shui, his body trembled and a complex look appeared on his face. Tang Ning looked at him, and after a moment of silence, she said, "Uncle." Tang Jing turned around and walked into the house and said, "Come in and talk." In the room, Tang Jing took a sip of tea and asked, "I heard something happened in the capital." Tang Ning put down her teacup and said, "King Huai rebelled. Your Majesty made King Run the crown prince and asked him to manage the government on his behalf." After hearing what happened in the capital these days, Tang Jing was silent for a long time before finally speaking. "The causes of the past, the consequences of today, the sins committed back then will eventually be repaid." Although Tang Ning and Tang Jing have a certain blood relationship, there is still some indelible unfamiliarity between them due to their experiences. Before finishing the cup of tea, he said goodbye. Tang Jing glanced at Tang Shui, who was sitting beside him, and said, "Shui, go see him off." "Oh." Tang Shui responded and stood up reluctantly. On the streets of Runzhou city, Tang Shui and Tang Ning were walking one behind the other. Tang Ning looked up at Tang Shui, who was just walking in front of him. He didn't know whether he was sending her away or she was sending him away. However, he also knew that after her identity was revealed, the relationship between the two would never go back to the past. He just followed her silently without saying a word. Tang Shui himself remained silent. Along the way, when he found that Tang Ning didn't say a word, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. This matter is between the two of them. Should she, a woman, be asked to speak? In her heart, a voice suddenly came from the street. The book has its own golden house, and the book has its own beauty. Reading makes people wise, so you should read more newspapers, eat less snacks and sleep more, and become a useful person to the country in the future. Tang Shui and Tang Ning looked over at the same time, and saw that somewhere on the street corner, several young people were surrounding a young man, laughing at something. A young man laughed twice and asked, "You have read a lot and are so good. Why don't you take the top exam?" The number 1 scholar, a trace of disdain appeared on the young man's face, and he said, "In the past, even the number 1 scholar had to call me young master when he saw me." At this time, a girl dressed as a maid came out of the nearby shop, glanced at the young man, and cursed, "Xiao Tang, you are talking nonsense again, why don't you help me get something?" The young man immediately retracted his head and said, Sister Xiaoqi, here we come. This scene caused another burst of laughter among the young people, and the surrounding atmosphere was filled with joy. After the Tang family was raided and executed, Tang Zhao disappeared, and the court has not found him yet. Compared to before, he has changed so much. Even Tang Ning can't compare the young man just now with that young man. The dandies who can be named in the capital are connected together. Tang Shui looked at the young man who left behind the pretty maid and said, "It's good for him to be like this." Tang Ning couldn't deny that in many cases, it was better to be an ordinary person and live a stable life when one was born into a wealthy family or into a powerful family. Many ordinary people yearned for the life of the powerful, but they didn't know that more and more people would live a stable life. Being in the upper class circles, the turmoil became more serious. The powerful families they envied did not even have the chance to choose to be ordinary people, so the whole family disappeared from people's sight. After breaking the silence, the tension between the two seemed to have eased a bit. Tang Shui glanced at him and asked, "Where to go next?" Tang Ning said, "I should go back to Guizhou." Tang Shui asked, "Where is the western region?" Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "There's nothing major going on in the western region. They can just handle it themselves." He thought for a while, then looked at Tang Shui and said, "The western region should be yours, how about you take care of it?" Tang Shui glanced at him and said calmly, "Not interested." After saying this, she just lowered her head and walked, but in her heart she was blaming Tang Ning. It's already now, how long does he want to play dumb? When this thought came to her mind, she suddenly realized that she was actually looking forward to Tang Ning saying something in person. And among the words she expected him to say, there was only one possibility. Tang Shui was shocked. She didn't know when her feelings for him had changed so much. This made her feel embarrassed and annoyed, and she was also a little flustered. She just kept her head down and didn't notice that a carriage was galloping in front of her. "Look at the road." Seeing that the carriage was coming without slowing down and was about to hit Tang Shui, Tang Ning quickly reached out and grabbed her hand, saying, "What are you thinking about? You don't even look at the road." After saying that, he wanted to pull his hand back, but found that his hand was tightly held by her. Tang Shui raised his head, looked at Tang Ning, and asked, "What are you going to do about our affairs?" Tang Ning asked in confusion, "What about us?" "Stop pretending," Tang Shui glared at him and said, "About the engagement." Tang Ning looked at her, unable to figure out what she was thinking. After thinking for a long time, she asked tentatively, "Anyway, this is all about the previous generation, so why don't we just forget it?" As soon as she finished speaking, she felt a sharp pain in her palm. Tang Ning gasped and hurriedly said, "Be gentle, it hurts." Tang Shui slightly reduced the force, looked at him, and said expressionlessly, "I'll give you another chance to choose again." Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 993. Chengguo, the capital. Since His Majesty appointed King Run as the Crown Prince and ordered the Crown Prince to manage the affairs of state, and the four countries withdrew their troops, peace has returned to the capital and even the state of Chen. In this calmness, unrestful things occasionally happened in the court. The Prime Minister of the Tang dynasty resigned, and his replacement as Right Chancellor was Fang Jie, the former Minister of Household Affairs. In addition, Zhang Yan, the Minister of Rights who had been transferred, also returned to his position as Minister of Rights. In addition, there are some other official transfers in the court. Zhao Zhijia, the magistrate of Ping'an County, was promoted to Jingzhiyin in an exceptional manner. Minister Zhuokan Zhonmingli resigned, and someone soon took his place. What shocked and puzzled the people and officials the most was, of course, General Ximenwei, who had made great military exploits for the court and had already reached the top of the court at a young age. After Tang Xiang, General Xiao Juhe also resigned from the position of general and moved his family away from the capital. No one knew his whereabouts. The Fang family is undoubtedly a unique power in the court today. There is a minister in the family, one is the right minister of the court, and there is another who is already the future queen mother. No one in the whole family dares to touch the Fang family's edge. At this time, in the Fang family, Fang Zhe held a letter in his hand and looked a little ugly. Fang Hong looked at him and said, "When the child is older, let her do these things." Fang Zhe said in a deep voice, "Let her come back to visit us once a year." Fang Hong shook his head and said, "Then you go to Candy and see if she is willing to come back with you." Fang Zhe punched the table and cursed, "Tang Ning, you are going too far." Imperial Mausoleum. In front of two mausoleums that had been cleared away without a single weed, a middle-aged man wearing plain clothes stood there quietly. The middle-aged man seemed to be in poor health, his face looked sickly pale, and there were wisps of silver in his hair. He looked at the two tombs in front of him, covered his mouth and coughed twice, and whispered, "Rower, Xian'er, I haven't dared to come here to see you for so many years, have you ever complained to me?" He took out a white handkerchief from his arms and wiped the two tombstones spotlessly. His face showed a trace of relief that he had never seen before, and said, "The imperial doctor said that I still have a few years to live, and I will be able to see you soon. It's your turn, but I really don't have the face to see you." Rain started to fall from the sky. Wei Jian held an umbrella and stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, it's raining. Let's go back to the palace." Emperor Chen looked in the direction of the palace, shook his head, and said, "I have stayed in that place all my life, and I don't want to go back. In my entire life, I have never had a good look at the world of Chen Kingdom." Gizhu. Tang Ning and Xiao Ju stood side by side, looking at the small figures running around on the grass, and turned around and asked, "Is this really inappropriate?" "It's boring." Xiao Ju waved his hand and said, "You still want to enjoy it? They say that poisonous insects are everywhere in Gizhu. Who would have thought that there is such a good place hidden here?" Tang Ning glanced at him and asked, "So you all come to my place to eat and drink for free?" "Brother Tang, what you said is wrong." King Huai walked out of a small house and said, "We originally planned to pay the money, but you didn't want it." "Silver," Tang Ning snorted coldly, "Your Highness Prince Huai, can you repay what you owe me with silver?" King Huai smiled and said, "There are only common people here, Li Rui, and there is no His Highness King Huai." "Don't change the subject." Tang Ning glanced at him and said, "When Princess Hui gives birth to the child, you should leave as soon as possible. I will be annoyed when I see you." King Huai shrugged at him and said, "Anyang has agreed with the princess to be the godmother of our child. Aren't you making Anyang sad? Don't fool me with Wan'er." Tang Ning looked at Anyang, who was walking over arm in arm with Princess Huai, and said, "I tell you, we are all friends, don't ask me for money all the time. How long do you want to stay here? As long as you stay here, you will treat this place as your own home." Princess Anyang looked at Princess Huai and said, "Look, how can it be considered as harassment? I just told him that he doesn't care at all." King Huai, a cunning guy, actually set up such a trap for him in order to stay here and eat and drink for free. When Tang Ning saw him, she thought of being used by him, so she simply turned her back on him and entertained the child with Xiao Ruxiayi. Zhao Man himself is a child who has not grown up. During this period of time, he had a heated fight with a few little guys. During this period, the only ones staying with him in Gizhu were Xiao Ruxiayi, Zhao Man, Anyang, and Wanyan Yan. More than 10 years ago, the Qianliang dynasty was destroyed. The rebels of that year established the current Haoliang court, which made Xiao Xiao develop a sense of resistance to Gizhu. As her master, the old beggar couldn't swallow this breath no matter how much he thought about it. Simply let Lao Zheng lead the troops and completely overthrow the regime of Haoliang in the name of bringing order to chaos. Because Haoliang had already been infiltrated by Sumei and the elders, with their help, old beggar and old Zheng did this without much effort. From then on, the Xiao family became the master of the Liang kingdom again. Xiao wanted to go back to take charge of the overall situation. Fang Xinyu was inseparable from her and followed her. Tang Yaoyao's dream was to open the Tang family's business in every country in the world. In one corner, I can't wait to explore the Liangguo market. Wei Nianyun originally planned to stay in Guizhou for only 2 months, but her pregnancy extended this time indefinitely. Tang Shui and Li Tianlan are now in the western regions, which is Tang Ning's own backyard. Tang Shui wants to continue her journey that was interrupted last time. As for Li Tianlan, her talents can be best utilized in the western regions, and she herself has great enthusiasm for this. Each of them has her own things to do. Compared with them, Tang Ning himself is like an idle person. Not only him, but the whole world is idle. The countries are no longer at war and have become unusually harmonious. Some time ago, there were some waves in Xifen. After being unified by a powerful tribe, Xifen, which had been in chaos for a long time, set its sights on the countries in the western regions. Their vanguard had just come down from the plateau and encountered the western region's army that happened to retreat from the state of Chen. They were all captured alive. After that, there was no movement on the plateau for a long time. If they didn't come down to cause trouble, Tang Ning was too lazy to send people up there. The environment there was not conducive to the soldiers who grew up under the plateau to fight, and it would be difficult to manage even if they conquered it. The Xifen people were obedient, so Tang Ning had nothing to do. His day consisted of playing with the children and taking a walk with the pregnant Wanyan Yan. Xiaoju was also very idle. He was a person who could not sit still. Looking at Tang Ning, he could not help but say, "Wasn't there some movement in Xifen some time ago? How about we gather some troops and attack them to wipe out their lair?" Before Tang Ning could speak, King Huai shook his head and said, "The terrain of Xifen is extremely high. People living under the plateau have difficulty breathing. How can we fight?" Xiaoju asked suspiciously, "Really?" Tang Ning finally persuaded Xiaoju to change his mind. Qing ran over with her skirt in her hand and said, "Son-in-law, someone is looking for you." "Who?" Tang Ning had just asked when he saw Anyang walking over with his head down. Behind him, there was a middle-aged man. The man glanced at King Huai, Tang Ning, and Xiaoju, bent down and picked up a stick from the ground, gritted his teeth and said, "Rebellious son, treacherous minister, roll over here." Xiaoju saw Emperor Chen, his face changed, and he was about to remind Tang Ning and King Huai, but when he turned around, he found that there was no figure on both sides. "You two, wait for me," he raised his head and glanced at Emperor Chen, and ran towards the direction where Tang Ning and King Huai disappeared without hesitation. Complete book. A brief comment on the completion of the book. Actually, I don't have any good feelings about it. After all, it's not the first time I've completed a book. I mainly want to say that the main volume of Ruyi Xiaolang Jun ends here. There will be some extras next. They are called extras, but they actually include the plot after the main text, some holes that have not been filled yet, the historical plots mentioned in a few sentences in the main text, the final endings of some characters, etc. In short, if you want to see who's extras, what extras, or if you are not satisfied with the plot and want to make up for it or write it in detail, you can leave a message in a single chapter later, and I will arrange it according to the number of readers' likes. The second thing is to make a final summary of this book and some explanations. This book was originally planned to be written about 3 million words, but in the end it was only about 2.5 million. This is because when I was writing the Western Regions Dungeon, I made some adjustments based on the actual writing situation. The original plan was to write the Western Regions plot, the following Chu Kingdom plot, the Haoliang plot, and the Xifen plot as a large dungeon of more than 100,000 words. However, in the process of writing the Western Regions Dungeon, I found that writing about war is still my shortcoming. Readers don't like it, and I am not happy to write it. I fell into a vicious cycle of not wanting to write words every day. Obviously, according to the outline, the Liang Kingdom dungeon and the Xiphon dungeon will fall into the same embarrassing situation. I can't write like that. What I write is not what readers want to see, nor what I want. Although if I really want to do that, I can still make a lot more money. So I cut off the content of these two dungeons. There is always some emotion in writing a book. I can't make money by watering the number of words and even give up my own emotions. After all, I still want to eat this bowl of rice in the future. However, there is no need to doubt it. Although the number of words is much less than the original plan, the overall outline and the original plan have not changed a word. If you add a sentence, Tang Ning went to Yunnan to help Xiao Xiao restore the country and pacify Xiphon before this chapter, it will be the most original idea. What I did not do is to increase the number of these 17 words to 500,000. Many readers ask me to keep adding more words. I will reply to them here. Maybe you really want to, but I can't do it. The problems with the plot are explained here. If someone still thinks that my detailed explanation is hasty, then our thinking is indeed not in the same dimension. Please don't try to convince me that I am wrong and keep your opinion. Let me talk about the new book. I want to challenge myself in the new book and change the genre. It takes a long time to prepare. You can follow the WeChat public H not wrong Xiao wrong and Weibo not wrong Xiao wrong to learn the latest news. Finally, thank you all for your company over the past year. Thank you.